Okay, I'm here today with Dave Smith, who's a good friend of mine, a meditation teacher. He lives in Colorado. He was one of the co-founders of the Secular Dharma Foundation. He's done a lot of work in Buddhist recovery, developed online programs. He's done mentoring work for people. So he's had a long and varied career in this area. So it's great to talk to you today, Dave.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Mike. Thanks for doing this.
Okay, so today we want to talk about a new project that you've been working on and putting a lot of effort into. It's to develop a a course and a program on what's called mindfulness based ethical living. Now, this is a kind of a new program that grew out really of Stephen Batchelor's work in the secular Dharma. Stephen has wanted to um, kind of connect the secular Dharma with the broader mindfulness movement in order to bring a kind of philosophical and ethical and psychological dimension into mindfulness. And he did a program sponsored by Buddha Stiftung in October of 2022, where he presented some of his initial ideas on mindfulness-based ethical living. And there's been a number of people who've been kind of developing this program. Stephen has um, indicated that he just wants to see people kind of run with this and develop it in different ways. And Dave Smith one of the people who is doing that. So, Dave, let me just start off by asking you, how did you get interested in beginning to work on this program on mindfulness-based ethical living?
Yeah, the funny thing is, I actually about 10 years ago wrote an ebook called Ethical Mindfulness. And the story about that was sort of funny. That I got hit by a publisher to write a book, and they didn't think the ethical mindfulness book was popular or good enough an idea to be a printed book, so it ended up being an ebook. So I've been dancing around this ethical mindfulness idea for a long, long time. I've also taught both. I both love and appreciate secular mindfulness, MBSR, all the MBI programs, therapeutic programs that have been developed. I've taught a lot of those. I think there's a lot of value in those. I support those. And I also teach classic Theravada insight meditation retreats. And I like that world. And I like the Pali Canon and I like early Buddhism. I like both of them. And for many, many years, I kind of waffled back and forth. Do I want to be an insight teacher? Do I want to be a secular mindfulness person? And I personally really struggled with what I wanted to do. And ultimately, I was like, well, wouldn't there be a great way to do both? Kind of both and not either or, this either or thinking. It's like, well, how could we both have fidelity and respect for the early Buddhist tradition and adopt it to meet the needs, the secular needs of the modern world, including some of the therapeutic ideas we have? I mean, we've made a lot of advancements in therapy and psychology in the modern world. Why not blend that with early Buddhist thought? It just seemed like kind of the best of both worlds.
Mhm.
And I ironically was going to do a big long secular Dharma program with Stephen Batchelor. And I've been working on it for years. And then in the midst of me putting together this other program, it was at one point called mindfulness based human flourishing, and I didn't like that title so much. And actually, I was talking to you, and you mentioned that they renamed it as mindfulness based ethical living. And then I said, well, I should just do that, because that was kind of what me and Stephen were going to do that anyway. And because I feel like I've been wanting to be part of something bigger, as I've been in the past with different Buddhist organizations, I felt like it was a time for people like you, people like myself, people around the world who have kind of been doing this sort of secular Dharma, secular Buddhism dance for a little while. All of us dancing around the same fire, but not really sure what that looked like. It felt to me very truly, and it hit me pretty strong, that MBEL, Mindfulness Based Ethical Living, was kind of a way in which a lot of us could sort of stick a flag in the ground and say, hey, this is what we're doing. And being more specific about what it is that we're talking about, and really creating a doorway for anybody who's interested. So, and I've been working and reading Stephen's books for years, and talking to him on Zoom and Skype for 10 years and sitting retreats with him, that I really feel very happy now that we have something that we can kind of stand on and say, here's an actual program that's rooted in early Buddhist thought, that has respect to the early tradition and also bridges these other ideas, doesn't require you to have any sort of belief system. It's, in many ways, it's a kind of perfect secular program.
Wonderful. That's really helpful, Dave. So tell us now a little bit more about the program. Tell us, when you're offering it, the dates, but also a bit about the format. Is this a program that someone will be taking just online, or is there any in-person component? And
Mhm.
so describe that a bit more for us.
Yeah, well, the other thing about building the program, which was great, is I got to build the program myself, and having done being a participant in many programs like this, and also teaching programs like this, it blends two of the best worlds, I think, is there is an online component. So it's an 8-month program that runs from January 1st, 2024 to September 2024. And it's online. There's a monthly group and a monthly practice group on Zoom. There's also 2 residential retreats, which will happen in March and September. They're 7-day residential retreats. They're at Big Bear Retreat Center in California, which is a lovely place. And what it does is, one of the things I've noticed over the years, and I've heard people kind of to some degree complain about, is that people kind of study the Dharma. Maybe they go to a Berry Center for Buddhist Studies, or they take an online workshop. There's kind of the study of Dharma, or the study, like an academic study of material. And then there's these like long retreats where we go and we don't talk to anybody and we don't make eye contact. And there's kind of this way in which, wouldn't it be nice to merge the two together? So that way you're practicing with other people, doing long periods of meditation, being in long periods of silence, but then actually being able to present ideas and then talk about those ideas as a group. So it's more of an educational format. So the retreats will be not unlike a silent insight retreat. We'll do something which is what I call partial silence. So there'll be a period of, there'll be a teaching session, and then people can talk, have a dialogue in small groups, and then report back to a bigger group. So there'll be some conversation. And then there'll be periods of time where we won't be talking, we'll be in silence, we'll be practicing for large hours of the day, having meals in silence and having some of the meals talking. So we're going to kind of rock back and forth between being in a contemplative space, being in a quiet space to practice these ideas, and then being able to discuss those ideas. The other thing that we're doing that I think is really helpful and important, that I've been doing for years and I really like to do, is getting a little bit away of me being the expert on the material and you being the student, and having this top down sort of patriarchal thing that we kind of just see in all religions, and Buddhism certainly guilty of that as well. Is sort of like, I'm presenting ideas and you're kind of expected to agree with these ideas, and there's not a lot of room for debate or controversy. So we're going to do not so much the classic 1-hour Dharma talk, but more teaching sessions in the morning where maybe I'll present an idea on the 4 tasks for 20 or 30 minutes. People will get in small groups. They'll have a discussion about that. And then we'll come back as a larger group. So we'll really be kind of coming at Dharma more, not as a scriptural, here's the word of the Buddha, but here's some early ideas. And let's talk about these ideas. Let's just have a dialogue and say, well, what do we agree with? What do we not agree with? What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? And we know this in Western Academy. When you go to college or university, it's okay and it's allowed and it's encouraged to have a debate about the material that's being presented. And I think that that's one of the features that the Dharma world could really use, a lot of people would benefit from, is a dialogue and a conversation. So that will be a big part of it.
Mhm.
And that will be something that you're not really going to see in other places, is a way to have a conversation about that. So it's more of a dialogue, I guess, rather than a top-down teaching model.
Right. And that's something that in your own teaching, as you've developed over the years, I think from what I understand from talking with you, has become more and more prominent, the move away from the sort of traditional role of the teacher and this, sort of teacher-centric perspective to one that is more engagement, more group discussion, the use of dyads and so forth. And so, in a sense, this new program that you're offering in 2024 is very consistent with the kind of approach that you've been developing over the years. So let me ask you this, Dave. We're talking about in some ways a kind of, as you say, a both and approach where there's certainly are sort of a central element of the program involves um, a kind of reflection and engagement with early Buddhist concepts, and also an engagement with developments in psychology, in ethics, politics, and so forth. So, if you were describing this program, obviously you wouldn't call it a Buddhist program per se. So, how would you, or let me ask you this: what for you are the main sort of perspectives that will be included in this program?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And I'm actually sorting that out at the moment. But yes, it's not a Buddhist program. It is really, and we could go down that road, but that's a big can of worms. Is that in Stephen Batcher's book, After Buddhism? This is an after Buddhism program. We have no problem with Buddhism, but that's not what we're doing here. And so, really, I guess the overarching theme we would just say is mindfulness. The practice of mindfulness is certainly well respected and well revered and well taught within the Buddhist tradition, but there's also these current applications of it. And let's just be really clear about one thing: mindfulness is not a Buddhist thing. Mindfulness is an innate capacity of the human experience. So it's not this specialized thing that the Buddhists developed. It's just a way, and it's a very natural way in which a human being, whether they're a Christian, a Buddhist, an atheist, or a Muslim, doesn't matter what your belief system is. Mindfulness is something that's available to everybody. So it's very secular in that sense. So that overarching theme is, of course, the practice of mindfulness, and we'll come at it from different perspectives. And then also ethical living. Well, what does that mean? Ethics, and how to live an ethical life. And that, to me, that there's really three constituents. That when I think about secularity is that the goal of secularity is to improve the life for everybody on the planet, right? To be tolerant towards other people. And if we're going to trust anything, if we're going to put faith or stock in any ideas, science is probably the one to trust. And that also, the other idea is it's good to do good. It's good to be good. It's good to give back. It's good to be kind. It's good to be generous. It's very good and healthy, we know from many perspectives, to do these things. And the ethical framework, I think, that we're coming from is not like from Buddhist precepts. It's not about what specific behaviors one should do or not do. I think we're staying out of the weeds. I think that's very much morality, and that's a can of worms I have no interest in opening. But it's more the ethics of what we would call a Brahma Vihara ethics. And it's the ethics of how do I live a life where I can be kind to myself and others? How do I actually do that? How do I be caring to myself and be caring to other people? How do I have gratitude and joy for myself and other people? And how can I have equanimity in the reality that this is a messy game? So we're not really so much interested in defining ethics and telling you what one should do or not do, but really how using mindfulness as an awareness, as a posture, internally, externally, how we relate to the world. But bringing these are some of the earliest ideas in the Pali Canon, the Sutta Nipata, the teachings of the Metta Sutta, which is one of the oldest discourses. So these ideas are very rich there. They're also very well respected and very well talked about in the world of emotional intelligence, in the arena of what's called constructive emotions, trying to live a life where we're engaging our emotional life, which is with ourselves and others. And the emotional landscape of the world that we live in right now is not a very healthy landscape. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. So trying to understand these dharma emotions, or this way of trying to bring kindness and compassion and gratitude and equanimity into those practices. So you have mindfulness, you have these relational healthy emotion concepts, and that becomes a conversation where lots of different conversations can emerge from. So, honestly, taking a lot of inspiration from the Dalai Lama's book, Beyond Religion, on secular ethics, which I think is, I don't think we're going to have a prerequisite book for this course, but if there was one, that might be one I would pick, because he talks about these ideas in that book. And the big idea that he talks about is that of tolerance. Having tolerance for other people, having tolerance for other people's political views, social views, religious views. And I don't have to really highlight this too much, but if you look at the current world we live in, there is very little tolerance for other people's views and perspectives. And Buddhists and mindfulness people and nice people like us are just as guilty as everybody else as clinging to our views and having contempt and thinking we have the right view and you have the wrong view. And this is clearly a problem. And so using mindfulness based ethical living is trying to rethink these ideas, and how do we become, if we're going to want to create a better world for ourselves and our children and other people, we really, really have to tackle these kinds of ideas. So that's kind of the context that we're holding all of this in, and which gives us a lot of opportunity to explore a whole range of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely the case. And I think that we both share very much the goal of um, trying to take or make sure that mindfulness is not just a kind of self-help
Totally.
modality, but is embedded in a broader framework, one that involves personal relationships, but also concern and care for the wider community and society. And I think this is something that Stephen has also talked a lot about as well. And I think this is really a positive development. So having told us what you see as being some of the really important core elements of the program, what do you see as your objectives for this program in terms of the people who are participating? What would you like to be come out of it for
Yeah.
them?
No, that's a good question. I would like personally, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, and this is, I think that this is where I think the largest appetite is, frankly, is, you have Jack and Tara's teacher training, you have MBSR trainings, you have like a huge plethora of mindfulness trainings out there. Mark Coleman has a training. There's a lot of really great mindfulness trainings out there, MBSR, and a lot of these people, they do these trainings, they learn MBSR, they learn different kinds of secular mindfulness things. They get a lot of bang for the buck out of it. They feel like it's very, very helpful. And then they finish these programs and they go, okay, what's next? And there is no what's next. So you have all these people who don't really want to maybe go to an IMS or a Spirit Rock. They don't want to dip their toe too far in the Buddhist pool. And they're kind of wandering around in the dark looking for somewhere to go. So my hope is to bring the Dharma to those folks, but the Dharma, not Buddhism, meaning that let's just look at these texts, these polycanonical texts, from an academic lens, not saying this is the right thing, this is the only thing, but just to say, here's where the stuff came from. Let's just talk about it. Let's see what it says. And that's where we get into these 32 facets of awakening. So looking at it more from a academic, for lack of a better word, but more like, hey, let's look at these, let's observe and talk about these texts in a way that like we would any other text that we would ever read. They're not religious scripture to be believed and to be adhered to, but they're ideas to be explored. And I think that bringing it in that way will help people have a lot of conversation. And also a lot of people, I think myself included, who have been in the insight Theravada world, who are just kind of, like, this is a question I get asked a lot because I am a Buddhist teacher, which I don't even like that word, but that's what I am. One of my big fears is I go to a barbecue or a cookout or someplace in my local town, and somebody asks me what I do, and I'm immediately confronted with having to deal with their poorly informed concept of what Buddhism is. So I wear the title very uncomfortably. And I think a lot of people who really love the Dharma, they love mindfulness, they love these practices, but the overarching religious undertone or overtone or Buddhism-y stuff of it just doesn't feel uh, really authentic. So trying to bring those two worlds together, where like maybe the mindfulness people could use a little more Dharma, and the Buddhist people could use a little less Buddhism, and trying to create a format or a structure, or even dare I say a community where people can practice from like-minded perspectives, where we're looking at these things um, more conversationally, rather than staying away from these truths with capital T's and that kind of business. But these are just ideas. Let's explore them. Let's check them out. And that actually fosters a lot of mindfulness ideas, looking at them with curiosity, looking at them with investigation, looking at them with interest, looking at them with suspicion. These are all qualities of mindfulness that we all talk about, but shouldn't we be bringing those qualities of mindfulness to some of these teachings, rather than just feeling as though we're expected to adhere, which is kind of the business of religion. So I think it's a very exciting time for mindfulness and for this stuff, because I think and we'll find out, of course, but I think there's a lot more interest out there than people might think. I think that there's an appetite for this kind of thing. I hope there will be.
Yeah, I think there is, Dave. In fact, there was a recent article in the Secular Buddhist Network website on a sort of parallel development of a course on Mindfulness Based Ethical Living, which is actually quite different than yours in terms of its format. It's really totally an online course over a shorter period of time. But it's interesting, the readers' responses to that were very positive, and people were saying,
Cool.
bring it on. We
Yeah.
want it, right? And I think there is a bit of a hunger for that. I just want to back up just in the beginning of your reply to the last question. You talked, and I think quite rightly, about the fact that we want to look at the text from the Pali Canon not as religious texts that we just assume are correct, and in the way that some fundamentalist Christians look at the Bible, um, but we want to explore it, to discuss it. You use the term academic, and I guess it was, but I would slightly not differ with you just in the use of the term, because I don't think you were thinking
I
about
don't
it
like the
as,
term myself. If you have a better
yeah,
one, I'd be happy to hear it.
because I was just saying that academic, I think, implies the idea that
Too
it's
dry.
not it's not going to be connected with engagement or action. And I think you and I both see the exploration and the discussion of these ideas as vitally part of how we live in the world, how we act toward other people, how we engage with our community. So I'm not sure what the correct wording
I
would
don't
be,
either.
but
If you, yeah, I would. I say the word with some degree of hesitation. I don't have a
yeah,
better one. Yeah, it is academic, but it's a lot more than that. Academic is a bit
yeah,
dry.
yeah,
I almost think about it as like a map,
yeah.
and like, I get a map to a city, I'm not necessarily believing in the map or worshiping the map. I'm just using the map to find my way around. And so I think these poly formulas and these poly texts, when I think about them very much in a map kind of language.
That's a
These are maps to the human experience that will help you find your way around. Some of the map might be useful, some of the map might not be. Some of the map you might not be interested in, but yet what it is, it gives you a way to guide through your inner experience and a guide through your world. And I think that, we don't cling to maps so much. We see them as a useful device, they're a navigational tool. And I think that's sort of what the way that when I look at the teachings in the Pali Canon, and a lot of people don't call them, they're really formulas. And so, you check it out, you, even if you went to a city with a map, even if you didn't like the map or didn't believe in the map or didn't think the map was useful, you'd probably take a look at it anyway. And you might find a couple helpful, useful, be like, oh, I didn't know where that was. Well, there's that place we want to go to. So I think holding with the looseness of that kind of thinking is a way to stay out of the sticky weeds of clinging to views or right and wrong and belief and all that kind of stuff.
for that. So just a couple more questions. Who would you like to have participate in this program? Is it someone who has already done retreats or has done a mindfulness program, or do you want to open it up to actually anybody who has an interest in
Yeah,
this area?
I think really honestly, and this is the question and this is the experiment, is I hope and believe that somebody who knows nothing about mindfulness, nothing about early Buddhism, who knows nothing about any of the things you and I have discussed so far, could take this course and could get benefit from it and would not be hearing anything that was over their head. And that's one of the things, one of the compliments I get as a teacher is I'm able to convey these ideas in very real, practical situations. So our hope is to keep it wide enough that you don't need to have any sort of prereq courses to take it. In fact, and I would probably argue this, somebody who doesn't have any background in this stuff actually might do better in the course because they don't have any unlearning to do. So that is our hope, and we really see it as I talked to Stephen about this, because one of the things, of course, I'm interested in is secular Dharma. We have a secular Dharma foundation. Is I sort of backing away from that one step and saying this is kind of the doorway into a secular Dharma would be a mindfulness based ethical living, and then people take this course, they take your online course, maybe they take our 8-month course, and then maybe they want to, after doing that, they might find that they're actually resonating more with the MBSR stuff. They want to go more into science. They want to go more into psychology. Or they come into MBEL and they go, oh, wow, maybe they become more interested in the Dharma or more interested in the Pali Canon, and being able to respond to that range of needs because we're all so different. And one thing I just want to add, and I'm glad you mentioned the online course, and I know that Stephen feels this way, I'm also not interested in all at making kind of a cookie cutter program for MBEL. I'm not interested in making a manual or doing what some of the other programs have done. I think there could be many different MBEL programs, and mine looks different than yours. And I think they all shouldn't necessarily look the same. Because there's lots of different ways to approach mindfulness. There's lots of different ways to approach this material, and I think that that's part of the. And I know that Stephen has said this: is we do not want this to just turn into another version of what we're trying to get away from, where we have our views and we have our beliefs. Is it's trying to say, like I think there could be 8 or 10 different MBEL programs that have great similarities and maybe some great differences, and people can kind of find their way. And now hopefully we won't screw that up. It will be hard to not screw that up, but I think that that's an intention for all of us out of the gate, is that every MBEL program doesn't need to look exactly the same, and probably shouldn't.
I think that's absolutely right. And I mean, again, MBEL, this is a work in progress. So who knows where it leads? I mean, if it goes well and we can bring these programs out there, and they may develop in different ways. There may be an MBEL for psychologists, an MBEL for political activists. Who knows?
Who
Have to say.
knows?
So listen, let this finish up, and so you can let folks know how to register for this program. So it's beginning January 1st, 2024.
That's right.
Right.
You got
So
it right.
how would
Yep.
someone, if they wanted to be, again, this is an eight-month program
Yep.
from January through September of 2024, two in-person retreats, and it's what, at the Joshua Tree,
No, it's
um,
at Big Bear Retreat Center, which is in
Big
Big
Bear
Bear,
Retreat
California.
Center. Okay,
Yep.
and then monthly Zoom meetings and material on a website. So how would someone sign up for this?
Well, I think in your show notes here, you'll have a link so people can click
Yeah.
on that. It is open for registration. It is being promoted. The Secular Dharma Foundation is the host of the program, so it's going through that. It's going through our social profit organization. People can register. They can sign up. They can get in touch with us about that. It's open for registration. We've had quite a few signups already. Um, we have to hit them to we need 25 people to make it work, which I think will be no problem, and we would probably cap it at about 40. So there's not a lot of spaces available per se, but they can go to the website. There's a link that you'll have here. They can click on that. They can read through it, get all the details. If they have more questions, they can email one of us, me or my wife, off the website. But yeah, it does. So registration's open now. It will officially start January 1. And in terms of workload, I get a lot of questions about this. It's not that demanding of a workload, because people are like, well, how much work is there going to be? The big demanding part, I think, for everybody is going to be to get to these 7-day retreats, these 7-day in-person retreats. If you have to fly, you have to fly. You have to get time off of work. Going on retreats is never convenient for any of us. So if you can make the retreats work, I think that you're good, because the monthly stuff there'll be one 90-minute monthly teaching a month, and Stephen Batcher will be doing quite a few of those. He won't be at the in-person retreats, but he'll be in the program. And there'll be a practice session every month, which will be just a mindfulness practice, and that will be it. Everything else, all the reading material, all the curriculum stuff, will be housed in an online learning management system that people can log in and access to at any time. If you miss one of the sessions, which likely you will, we're going to record all the sessions. So if Stephen does a session and you can't make it and you're bummed out, you're going to miss it, we'll just record it and put it back into the course. So it's not a huge time commitment. So I just want to be clear about that. But although it will be also quite rich, there'll be a lot of stuff there, but a lot of it will be self-paced. A lot of the course material you can read at your own leisure. You can watch some of the videos, you can do the meditations. So it's kind of a nice combination of those two things. And so people want to sign up, they can. If they have questions, they can email. But the email link that you have here has most of the details in there, and people can kind of check that out. And really anybody's encouraged and invited to sign up, regardless of their background or their practice history. This is totally available to everybody. There's no big ideas we're hitting people with. And like I said, funnily enough, the least experience you have, you might actually find that you have a jump start over the other people.
Well, listen, thank you, Dave. This has been great, and I think it's also exciting to be part of a kind of ongoing process, and something
Totally.
that can really, I think, be helpful in terms of contributing to what Stephen once refer to as a culture of awakening, more
Totally.
mindfulness and compassion. And I think in our own way, we're each trying to be a part of that. So again, thank you for being with me. You take
Yeah,
care.
absolutely.